Sega Genesis was my system of choice back in the 16-bit era. To me, the games were more gritty and less kid-friendly than the games on the NES, and when I saw Sonic, I just had to have one. Not too much longer, a great rivalry between the Genesis and the SNES came around that delivered tons of great games. Alas, Sega isn't the same company they were back in the 90s. After getting the pants beat off of them by Nintendo, then later Sony, Sega stopped making consoles and now just make games. Sega used to make some cool ass games, but now they're just rehashing Sonic over and over again. Now what they need to do is rehash some of their classics, games that made Sega Genesis my first choice. This is the Great Daitokuji, and these are my top 5 Sega Genesis games that need to be remade.
5.
Eternal Champions. Back in the 90s, everyone wanted to be Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. Eternal Champions was neither, but that didn't keep this game from being fun. Eternal Champions, released in 1993, was a homegrown Sega-produced game specifically for the Sega Genesis, and for the time it had a great story. The characters were plucked out at a time by a being called the Eternal Champion right before they were about to die, and they had to fight for their right to finish living in their timeline. The winner goes on to change their future, while the losers, well, they get put back at the moment of death. Since the only fighting game that Sega maintains is Virtua Fighter, they should have Arc System Works produce it. They should make it with a story mode, kind of like the one seen in Mortal Kombat 9. Put a graphics on it that looks like a Guilty Gear Xrd, and you'll have one hell of a game.
4.
Ristar. Have you heard of Ristar? No? Well, Ristar is Sonic Team's less appreciated mascot. He isn't fast, but he has stretchy arms, which he uses to bounce enemies. And he's a star, and for whatever reason, they only made one game. Yet, he still gets added to every collection Sega releases. And you know what this tells me? This game needs a remake. If Sega could give this guy a little love, I bet the result would be great. Oh, I would, Ristar. I would.
3.
Streets of Rage. Streets of Rage was the pinnacle of 16-bit beat-em-ups. Period. Final Fight was good, but I don't think the sequels improved the formula. That cannot be said about Streets of Rage. The first one was good, but the improvements from Streets of Rage 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3 make Streets of Rage series the best. This series needs to come back, and I know there's a fan reboot out there, and it has almost everything that will make the reboot perfect, but since Sega didn't make it, it doesn't count. All that is missing is being able to buy new moves as well as level up your character along with some HD hand-drawn graphics, and this would be one awesome reboot.
2.
Comic Zone. What's the deal with Sega and the one and dones? Here's another one. Comic Zone, the best comic book game that was not based on a comic book. You play as Sketch Turner and you go through panels kicking ass on screen just to save a girl that you drew. It was an awesome concept, and it should have a sequel. Since kick-ass 2D games are making a comeback with today's generation of consoles, this game would put Sega back on the map.
1.
Kid Chameleon. Kid Chameleon is one of those memorable games that you generally remember for being fun as well as hard. I've heard someone use the phrase, "This falls in the Battletoads category of hard." Well, I don't think it is hard as Battletoads. It is still hard. Back when I was a youngin', I played this game to what I did not know at the time was the last stage, right before the last boss. But instead of getting to the end of the level, I warped to some other stage. Not until years later did I find that out it was the last stage, right before the last boss. Yeah, it's that kind of hard and frustrating. With over 100 stages, warps that take you to elsewhere, more power-ups than you know what to do with, this is a multiple playthrough type of title. And if you want to see all the levels and power-ups, you're going to have to play through it multiple times. This game deserves a reboot on a massive scale. 3D Super Mario type. Tons of power-ups, great levels. It would be awesome to see in 3D. Get rid of those slippery controls though, and you'll have one awesome game. Thanks for watching my top 5 Sega Genesis games that need to be rebooted. If you have any games that you'd like to see rebooted, please leave them below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This is the Great Daitokuji, and for Culture Junkies, we'll see you next video.
Culture Junkies!